And I want to welcome everybody to the Division 5 NMRA meeting for August or October 2020. And we've got a great clinician lined up for us today. We did change the time from I executive decision. I changed the time from 7:30 to 7 to see if that way people may have more time in the evening since we're running longer. And it seemed like about 9 o'clock, some people were dropping off. So hopefully this time will work better for everybody. We'll see what see how it goes, and if we need to, we'll switch it back to the 7:30 time. So, but anyway, with that, I don't have many announcements. I know that of course, the Texas Express is the NMRA convention for national next year is at Grapevine in 23. The registration's open on that, so that's in just go to 2023texasexpress.com, and then you can click I think right on the front page there's register for the convention, and then also button to get the info to get the hotel rate. So pretty good hotel rates for that. So you want to sign up early and take advantage to get a part of the tours and all this stuff before it fills up. So I think this is going to be a pretty big shindig, I would say, in Texas here. So, and then I think the other thing coming up's in January. They usually do the Plano train show in there. So that's always a good one to go to. I usually able to go to that one past few years. So, and then as far as future meetings coming up in November, we're going to have Bernard Helen talking to us with miniprints.ca. So before the meeting here, we were talking a lot about 3D printing. So that'll be a really good one to watch. I was able to host the interview with him on the NMRAX many years ago now. I think it was in 2020, and he talked about painting his mini prints and everything on that one. So it'll be great to see. He's moved into a new space since then. He just started out in his the basement of his house, I think, cottage industry, and it's grown into a huge deal. So that's exciting for him. He's coming out with new models all the time, and it's an addiction. It's an addictive store, I think, because I look on there all the time. I'm like, oh, I want this one, or I should buy this one now, so I have it for when I can do a layout in the future. So we'll have that in November, and then December I'm going to try to do thinking about just doing like a holiday party. Maybe we can just chit chat, talk, show us your layouts, anything you're working on. And I'm also thinking about doing some prize giveaways on that. I've actually got a few things that I think would be a great craftsman structure kit, some gift certificates, things like that. So you'll want to tune into that, and we'll figure out how to do the giveaway on that coming up, before then. So that should be a great time for everybody. And let's see what else is there. I'm going to post the link if you're new here. I'm going to post the link to sign up. If you've gotten the email forwarded from somebody else, so it'll be here in the chat, so you can sign up to the email list on for the Division 5 email newsletter. And of course, we'll be putting out updates for the 24 convention coming up, and then also, 23 convention, and then anything else happening in the NMRA will be going up there. So of course, I put out a newsletter every first of the month. Sometimes it's a week late or so, but depends on how busy I get. We'll put stuff out. Let's see, what was it? Oh, please report the Abilene Model Railroaders, Society Model Railroaders, I think is the name of it. They're moving into a new location. Finally found the building they were in. they had to vacate it because the owner wanted to use it for something else. And so they finally found a place. So they're working on getting their place set up. The Lubbock Model Railroad Association is going to be doing their they usually do a get together in or set up in the American Windmill Museum in Lubbock, and that's going to happen during the week of Thanksgiving, last week in November, last full week in November. So that one's a great. They go set up their tabletop layout setup up there, and that's a cool thing to see. And they get public in there and everything. So I think that's all that I know that's happening. Does anybody else have any information or events that they want to tell the group? I'll open the floor up here for y'all. All right. I don't think there's anybody. So with that, is there anybody that wants to show us a project that you're working on, or just tell us what's happening on your workbench or anything like that? Oh.
I escaped from the mountains after 5 months, and I'm back home finally. Came home over the weekend, and I actually cleaned the track and started running trains. My DCC system from Easy DCC I've had for about 20 years, and it's just about bulletproof, it seems. It's always started. This is the second layout I've had it on, and so I ran the indoor J gauge railroad.
Cool.
Had some friends over yesterday that brought their grandson over.
Nice.
Nice.
Did you have to? I guess the track wasn't too dirty while you were gone for the 5 months. Where was it?
Well, it's aluminum, and aluminum oxide actually conducts. It just picks up and makes your wheels dirty, and picks up other stuff. So
yeah.
I just get a rag and put it. I got a block of steel that I use for weights, and I wrapped it with a rag and just buffed out the track, and it's pretty simple, and it runs really well. So
cool.
So it was satisfying to come home and see that it runs, and the TV cameras and everything else started up and run too.
That's always good when it all works, especially Murphy's Law isn't really kind to things, I probably lost your connection there. Alrighty. Well, I think while John, oh, there he is. You back yet? For a second, I guess. All right. I see some new people in the chat list here, the people that have joined. If you're new, I want to open that up and just let you introduce yourself. Even if it may have been here before and haven't really, probably should have been doing this. So I see Kenneth Barry's a new person I don't recognize. And then there's an 817 number. I don't know your name on that one. So, but if you want to come on, just turn your camera on and audio. Feel free. If not, that's all right. But we're glad to have you here. So.
Yes. This is Kenneth. I'm just in Amarillo, relatively new to modeling, and have been a member in NMRA, and been getting your emails and had the time, so I thought I'd join tonight.
Good. Well, but we appreciate you joining. We're glad to have you here. So.
Thank you.
Yeah. All righty.
Kenneth, if you're here in Amarillo, I'd like to meet you.
Yeah.
Uh, hang on. There we go. Got my camera on
Yeah.
again. Yeah. So you're in Amarillo as well, I take it? Oops. Oh man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just outside Amarillo and Bishop Hills, out on test. Brooks, is he on the mailing list?
Yes, he should be. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If you, I could send him your contact info if you'd like, and I can, Kenneth, if you're okay, I can exchange infos, or if y'all want to do it in the chat here too, you can as well. So, yeah.
Just forward me his address and forward my address to him, please.
Yeah. Sure will. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Well, that's great. I love when people can connect. That's the whole reason of the NMRA here. So, it's great.
I think we lost.
Yeah, I think the internet is not doing too well today. It seemed like I was trying to get work done today, and I had to sit there and wait for ever to log into websites and things. So,
Oh, I was trying to download stuff this afternoon. I tried from Thingiverse and some file, and it was just crawling.
Yeah. Crazy. Cool. Well, alrighty. Well, if Ken joins back on, we'll hopefully we'll be able to get anyway. Tell him we'll give your info and stuff, get you connected here. So
Okay,
that's great. Well, it's getting close to. Hopefully, anybody else got anything to add, or before we get into the clinic? Alrighty. Well, I think with that, we'll start the clinic now. So I want to welcome James Regier from the really probably well, he's in the St. Louis area. Is that's correct, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, cool. I want to make sure I get that right. Anyway, you might have seen him on the Ken Patterson's What's Neat this week, and I was able to attend his clinic that he gave during the national convention about LEDs, and of course, if you haven't seen it, he's got this video about doing LEDs on a trackmobile, which I saw it and I thought, man, that seems like quite a challenge. I'd like to do it myself. So, so I bought two of them, and we'll get to it someday. But anyway, anyway, I'm going to turn it over to James here, and so you have the floor, sir, and show us everything about LEDs.
Okay. Well, I got two alternate presentations I could do talking about LED lighting on buildings or LED lighting on locomotives. So if there's any preferences, let me know which one you'd rather hear about tonight. Just a show of hands, I guess. If you want to hear about locomotives, raise your hand now. If you want to hear about, okay. If you want to hear about the buildings, raise your hand. All right. So buildings that seems to be, and I've done a little bit more on that lately here, and I'll get into my present project here at the end. So I'll just pull this up. And let's see if I can start screen share here.
Should be able to. I enabled it already.
Yeah. Okay, there we go. Desktop 2. There we go. And I think we are sharing it. Maybe.
It's starting. Taking a while.
Okay, it's starting.
Yeah.
So I will.
Yeah. It's just showing black right now.
Just showing black
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah, it says started screen sharing. Double click to enter. Maybe it's just mine. Is anybody else?
Same thing here.
Resume share. Come on.
It says slow
What?
internet.
Screen sharing is paused. Why is it paused?
That's interesting. I've never heard of that before.
Yes.
Maybe
okay.
yeah, just start it. Just try it again.
I'll start it again. Let's see if I can do the. There we go. And share. Screen sharing is paused. Why is that?
Never had that problem before. Let me consult the Google on the
Looking
internet.
at that. Yeah, let's see. I'm just trying to figure out if there's an antivirus thing that might be interfering with this.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Do you have a Apple or Mac or a Mac or Windows?
It's a Mac.
Oh, okay.
And I'm just going to have to. I'll try and take down Bitdefender for the moment and see if that'll do it. Turn off Shield for now. Okay, try it one more time. Okay. Share screen, PowerPoint. Oh, this is frustrating. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I was reading something that's like a bug with do you know which version? Are you running Big Sur on the OS version, do you know?
Yeah, Monterey.
Oh, okay. All right. That's what I have too. Well,
Yeah,
if you want to, I could send you my email address. Maybe you could email it to me, and then I could just share it from my end, if that would work.
maybe I could. Let me just.
If it's small enough to send.
Yeah, that's sort of the problem.
Yeah.
Unless you got Microsoft 365, I could perhaps share it that way.
I do, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And
yeah.
But I've never done that before either. Oh, nuts. Okay.
No, well, my keyboard's not working.
Okay. So now it says I'm screen sharing. Am I?
Yeah.
Very
yes,
good.
we see the PowerPoint application.
Okay.
Maybe if you just go hit present, the little down at that bottom corner there. Yeah. Play from start. Yeah.
There we go. All right.
Yeah. Alrighty. There we go. Cool.
So there we're started. So realistic lighting for models, and basically going to talk a little bit about a couple projects I've done using surface mount LEDs to simulate lighting for model buildings and vehicles. So to start off with, why do we light our models? Well, a lot of the time you're wanting to operate your layout, maybe in a nighttime setting. You might also want to highlight the inside details better of your buildings. I know a lot of people that, like with all the 3D printed details, you like to have your desk, you like to have your countertops, in your stores and all of these things inside your buildings. And so without the lighting, it's just a dark spot. So it's also a modeling element, because how often do you see lights on during the day or that sort of thing? It really highlights things, can make them more attractive. So general lighting challenges that we all encounter are that glow box effect. That is, if you put a general light into your building, it's an opaque side of that plastic building makes the difference between having a realistically lit structure and basically a lantern that's on your layout. Another challenge is heat dissipation, especially with the old incandescent bulbs. That was a challenge, that you could actually melt the side of your building, or if you have too many LEDs that aren't that aren't properly stepped down with the voltage, you can also wind up with some heat problems. How to hide the wiring is another question, because you obviously don't want a whole spider web of wiring, and you don't want that building stuffed full of wiring. That would ruin the effect. Now, I've found for lighting buildings, the best method of doing it is to be the architect. From the beginning, that you start that kit or you start that model. You decide if you want a general ambiance or a single light source glow, or if you want lighting for a detailed interior, and then what kind of lighting do you want? What era are you dealing in? If you'll notice in the background here, this is the Walters model of the Hutchinson, Kansas Santa Fe station. I grew up in that area, about half an hour from Hutchinson. And so having a well-lit, well-detailed building was a must. And it was sort of 1950s era. And I knew that buildings from about that area had a lot of ceiling lights going on, sort of can lights or the fluorescent lights. And so I decided I wanted to do that kind of lighting for the ceiling. And so that's how I built the structure from the beginning. Then decide if you want exterior lighting and how you want to go about doing that. Now, the common steps, no matter what path you take, are to, one, make your walls opaque. That you want to use a good layer of black paint, preferably on the inside of the walls, so that none of that light goes into the styrene walls of your building. Then you want to plan how to assemble your building. You may want to leave the roof of that building off for it to be accessible for servicing the lights. You may want to figure out how that lighting is going to be routed into the base of your layout, so that you have your power source planned out. And all of these different things are things that you really should ideally start thinking of immediately as you're starting this process of building your structure, because it's much easier to paint the walls black if it's still lying in pieces on your desk than to disassemble the building to do so, and all these different things. So we'll talk about components first. And here is, and I'm not sure how much the video window is obscuring this guy, so you may want to minimize the chat window. But this is an HO mechanic, and demonstrating just the different sizes of LEDs on this workbench. We have 0805 LEDs here on the left. We have 0603 LEDs in the middle, and then 0402 LEDs on the right. Excuse me. Now, I don't have any 0201 LEDs. That would be even smaller than the 0402 LEDs. For one, because I didn't have any at the time that I made this photo, but I found them small enough that they're impractical to work with. Now, the 0805 LEDs just by themselves can make good floodlights on the side of a building. The 0603s are good for general lighting, that you can use them as different light fixtures, that kind of thing. The 0402s are really kind of my favorite ones to use because they're about the right size for scale light bulbs in HO scale. You'll notice that the 0402 is about the size of this guy's hand, which makes it a decent light bulb size. The 0201s, I've tried to use them, but I've given up, and the reason for that, I ordered a couple hundred of them to test. I found that my loss rate for soldering 0201s was actually quite high. I was losing more than half of the 0201s I would try to solder together. The 0402s I could solder together okay. The other problem with 0201s is that the coloration, at least unless something has changed recently, has been somewhat limited to cool white LEDs or to red or other colors like that. Now, that's one issue that struck Rapido just a little bit when they made their their B36-7s here a couple of years ago. That when they were making their 4-light LED rotary beacon, they actually used red LEDs, which didn't quite wind up looking right. And that's because they were using the 0201s, and the reds were the closest that were available. Bright white or the bluish sunny white would not work as well. So 0402s are really what I like to use, and warm white in general. So surface mount LED assembly. What I find helpful is to either use double-sided carpet tape, or in this case, I've used 3M Super 8 spray adhesive and actually stuck a piece of masking tape upside down onto a sheet of glass. That allows for easy cleanup later because you can just kind of scrape it off the glass. And I've put the LEDs upside down onto that surface. You'll notice that the polarization is indicated by this marking on the back. This is your positive, this is your negative. And so you just lay the LEDs down and you solder them together, like so. I've also done this with the surface mount resistors that also function much the same way. But using that tape surface actually helps to hold them quite well, certainly long enough for you to get a good hold on your solder. It helps if you I use the 36 AWG magnet wire for this, which actually is small enough to go through the crevices and cracks of the locomotive shell without really causing any distortion, or of your building shell for that matter. And they can easily be hidden in plain sight. And it helps to tin those well before you try to apply them to the LEDs. So the 36 AWG magnet wire, I like to use at least 2 colors for this. Here you see on the green on the bottom, that's always the negative polarity, the blue at the top, because blue is your function common for your DCC color coding on your decoders. That's what I always use for the positive portion of the LED. So, and if you need more lighting functions for a given building, I would suggest you get as many different colors as you have lighting functions, because this will help you collate everything and keep everything separate later on. I've never actually done this, but I'd imagine my life would be easier if I would. The other substance that I use is silicone conformal coating. This applies like paint. It isolates wherever it's applied and protects against moisture. It can also be used as glue to adhere wires to the shell of the building, or to route the wires along your walls. I usually use this. I paint the LEDs themselves as well as any exposed leads from those LEDs to try and prevent any sort of cross-arcing or any kind of shorts at the LEDs, which will, of course, cause a lot of frustration and cause them not to work. Canopy glue, in this case microcrystal clear, is very useful for adhering LEDs and wires to models. It's a great adhesive for non-like substances. And in the case of many of the models that I found, it makes good light diffusers, and it makes good lenses for interior lighting. I like to use SIP pins for all of my LED installations because they're easy and they're unpluggable connection between building components. They come in rows of 16, but you can easily break them and cut down into the number that you need, so that if you want to remove a section of building for maintenance or to add interior details, you can do so without having to worry about tearing the wiring. You simply unplug the SIP pins here, which plug into each other, and you have your easy disconnection. A bridge rectifier is another immensely helpful component here because this allows you to have your plug for the building so that you can plug your building in with the wires going to these two terminals and not worry about the polarity of the that you're plugging it into, of the power that you're plugging it into, or DCC or AC current. It'll correct all of that for you, rectify it. And so that's a handy component that I like to include in each building that I do. And I also find it helpful to do an LED tester. This is a 9-volt battery. I have a 1K resistor in line right here, and it actually, you just simply hook it up to the anode and cathode of your LED, and you can test it without worrying about blowing up your LED. Just to make sure that if you have multiple LEDs in string, you can make sure that all of them are working easily on your bench before applying them to the building. So now we'll talk about individual projects here. This was a project that I did for the Magic House Children's Museum. And this is an oil dealership, Jansen Petroleum, and it's loosely modeled after a oil dealership that some relatives of mine had up in Manitoba in Canada. And in fact, I drew the logo from that oil dealership. So the first thing I lit up was the Walthers tank car oil loader rack. I detailed it and weathered it. And I scratch built gooseneck lights from sprue from the kit. I use those for the light sconces. And then the gooseneck is actually brass that I bent to shape. And so putting the LEDs, and these are all 0201 LEDs, I wrapped the wires around the pole as such and routed them underneath. And it actually produced a very realistic floodlight effect from this platform. And here you can see this is on my, it's on my 4x4 test loop that I have in the basement. I was just testing it out with all the lights off. You can see that it lights the tank car and the track next to it very, very well. So it produces a realistic effect that way. So this was one of the early experiments where I added floodlights to this Walthers loading platform. I also did a similar effect with this with the fueling island here, where I have these two lights. I used 0603 LEDs that I strung together in series to simulate the fluorescent bulbs, that would be in the lighting of the island. And you can see the floodlights on these individual buildings were done with the similar technique that I used for the oil platform. Now, the Hutchinson Station, this is the Hutchinson, Kansas Santa Fe Station. It's a mid-century modern design. When I got this Walthers kit, it was one of those things that I was stoked that they were building a kit based off of a prototype that I grew up so near, but I also felt that I had to get this thing right. I wanted to get it exactly as I remembered it from the 1980s and perhaps backdate it a bit to the 1950s or 1960s when this thing would have been seeing its peak use, servicing such trains as the Super Chief, El Capitan, the Chief, as well as whatever local traffic would be rumbling through. There was a local that went through Hutchinson and on up to Great Bend and eventually to Dodge City, where it would join the main, as well as locals that would go west along the main. So I added these great details to the interior, including, if you'll notice behind this station attendant, I have the timetable of all the trains that would have served Hutchinson in the late 1950s in a given day. They're all listed here. I added posters that I since colorized after taking these photos, but I added posters of the different destinations of the different trains that the Santa Fe Railroad would have had. And of course, added passengers to the waiting room, trash cans, tried to detail it out as best as I could. And such an interior demands lighting. So in this case, I decided to go for sort of a can light effect or can ceiling lighting. And I drilled about 48 holes that I counted in this thing with a number 68 drill bit. The number 68 drill bit is just large enough to accommodate the face of an 0402 LED. I countersunk it with the number 58 drill bit so that I could mount the LEDs flush into the back of this ceiling, so that it would be a neat mount, and so that they would basically be lighting fixtures that would be installed. And here you see the holes from the underside of the ceiling, and I patterned them as best I could to match the interior details. Here, for example, is the ticket counter. This is the waiting room. This is the station platform, the entryway from the exterior, and so on, the hallway to the restrooms. And when lit, you look from the top side, the Walthers station actually had a double ceiling, and this is something that I would also recommend, that you have a ceiling beneath the actual roof that you mount your lights into. And if the kit doesn't have one, it helps a lot to make one. That you can just mount the LEDs into that lower ceiling for your interior lighting. And then the result from the underside is you have this neat sort of can lighting effect that lights up the interior nicely, provides a realistic effect on the exterior, and it all looks pretty nice. And here we see another angle. And this is the Railway Express Agency loading platform on the other end of the station. These are the 0802 floodlights that I was talking about earlier. And this street lamp I made in a similar manner to what I used for the lights at the gas station or for the oil dealership. So now we'll talk about the City Classics service station briefly. The interior lighting was done much of the office there was done very similarly to what I did for the Hutchinson station. The exterior lighting here, as you can see, was done similarly to what I did with the oil platforms. But then I decided to play around a little bit, and I had a mechanic working on this car. And underneath the hood of the car, I put a single LED to function as a trouble light, so that the mechanics' work would be well lit. Here's the ceiling of the service bay of the garage. I had looked at the various I-beams and joists, that one sees on sort of the industrial ceilings where they're not hidden by ceiling tiles or any kind of ceiling decor, and thought I could nest the LEDs in between those I-beams, and these are Plastrect I-beams, and the result actually worked fairly well. Here you see the overhead lighting, and there you see the trouble light. Now, what you can notice here is that the trouble light's wiring is actually hidden in plain sight and doesn't really look like it would be all that much thicker than the wiring of an extension cord or the power source for a trouble light. So that's one nice thing about using that magnet wire, that it's easy to hide in plain sight and easy to disguise as an actual power cable. Now, of course, I've taken it beyond buildings, and I've had a good time playing with lighting up vehicles. These are a couple grain trucks that I lit up. Each of these marker lights is an 0402 LED that goes right on the roof, and then the headlights of these trucks are lit up in just the same manner that I'd light up a locomotive headlight. Of course, I add a bit higher resistance for this. I use a 20K resistor instead of the normal 1K resistor, which dims it down to more of an automotive headlight brightness than a locomotive brightness, because there is a difference in lighting intensity. So modifying the resistors can actually help to modulate the brightness of the LEDs. Let's see. And then another project that I really enjoyed doing was a Walthers DC3. Now, I'd been working on about that time when I started the kit. I was working on a Mr. Rogers Neighborhood trolley. That was an old Bachmann Spectrum trolley chassis, and it has a tiny N-scale motor. It's a very tiny one. And I looked at that motor and I thought, well, that could fit into the nacelle of this DC3. And so I decided to try that. And so I lit it up with the aircraft warning lights, as well as the landing lights and so on, the navigation lights, I guess. It doesn't flash. But I decided to use an Arduino to control the whole function. Here you can see it under construction, the holes drilled in the nacelles to accommodate those motors. Here's the Arduino circuit that I set up. Here's this is the rectifier coming in, and it goes to a step down converter to make sure that it's a solid 5 volts that this Arduino receives. And then the light's going to starboard and port, and then also the motor wiring is all set up here as well. And so the end result is, with programming of the motor, I was able to, with pulse width modulated control, I was able to do a realistic sputter up start for these DC3 motors. And so that brings me to talking a little bit about the usefulness of Arduinos and sort of artificial intelligence in animating these projects. Because not only can you do a realistic lighting flash or realistic motor animation, but you can also adapt your buildings to doing daytime and nighttime lighting. So, for example, with the Hutchinson station, I laid it out so that there are basically two circuits of LEDs going on, one on the exterior, one on the interior. And presumably the lights on the interior would be on at all times. But if I should decide to add an Arduino later on with a light detection addition that is a photoresistor, I can program it to then light up differently during low lighting conditions from high lighting conditions. So that's the presentation. Now I will talk about a couple other projects that I've actually been working on in this vein, and I showed. Let me just see if I can get back here. Okay, I've actually showed Brooks one of the projects that I was working on, and I talked about it on What's Nita here a few weeks ago. But I've been working on and the screen is really doing some wonky things to me in the background. But I've been working on a radio transmission tower. Let me just oops, no. Background effects. So we'll take this off. So I've been working on, this is a 3D printed radio transmission tower. And I've been working on a project to light this thing up realistically using an Arduino that can eventually be translated down to a smaller chip, like an ATtiny13. And the idea is to have a aircraft warning flash system on this tower that let's see, make sure that the idea is to have an aircraft warning system on the tower that will flash. I plug in the wrong cable, of course. There we go. So the idea is to have a warning light on the tower that'll flash like this during the day with a blue light or a white LED. And at night, when you take the light away, will flash red. So sort of a warning system, and that'll be mounted onto this tower. Unfortunately, between when I talked to Brooks about doing that project, and now I haven't been able to get to it. But those are a bunch of different projects that you can do with LED lighting. So now, if there's questions, I'd be happy to go to questions.
Do we just jump in with questions?
Yeah. Just unmute yourself and start talking.
Yeah. So that last one, you were talking about having a tiny chip, going to a tiny chip. Is that something you put on your, like the antenna, and then you only have to run like one wire back to the Arduino, or what is that?
So what the ATtiny13 chip is, it is a chip with eight poles. One's your power in, one's your voltage in, one's your ground, and then the other 6 can be used for various functions. And so it basically has fewer poles than an Arduino, but can supply some of those logic functions.
Okay. So you just use that instead of an Arduino board,
right? Okay. And so the advantage of that is that, whereas the idea is that eventually this building, will have its building at its base, the tower, like they all do, right? They have their service building at the base of the tower. And so the idea is that will be large enough to encapsulate the electronics that'll be driving the LEDs going up the tower. And the cables, again, will be hidden in plain sight, just as the cables that would be running up and down the transmission tower would be visible to the eye as well.
Yeah, cool. And then the other quick question I had was on the magnet wire. So is that insulated or no?
So the magnet wire is insulated. It's insulated with it's insulated with sort of a painted on coating.
Okay.
And the way you strip it is you actually burn it off with your solder, right? And so you only burn off as much as you need to, gotcha. and then solder it to your LED. And that's why you want to paint it in the end with this silicone conformal coating, because that re-isolates it, right? So that you don't have the exposed wires touching each other.
Excellent. Very good. Yeah, those are neat tricks to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
I always find when I try to strip that magnet wire with LEDs I've done, it'll just go really far. So yeah, the conformal coating's a good tip for that.
Right. And I'll usually strip it and then cut off, most of it that I don't need, just to help minimize it as well. But yeah, it definitely does go a little bit further than you intend.
Okay.
And of course, I'll just talk about this as another project that'll be an eventuality. I've made a little ectomobile here, and so designing the emergency flashers and all of that for this little thing will be a fun little project too. Sam Dennehy, of course, has done a whole bunch of different movie vehicles and has outsourced lighting to East Coast Electronics, and they're really inspirational with all the stuff that they do. I sort of like to do it myself, so we'll see what I can come up with that kind of thing.
What other kind of like things do you have to hook onto that A-Tiny13 to make it work? Like you need to like resistors, and then how does it get its power, or like what kind of power are you feeding?
Yeah, so for the A-Tiny13, you need a steady 3 volt of power. So it runs off of the same power as your LEDs. But the trick to it is you want to go through a step down process rather than through a step down converter, rather than through resistance voltage limitation. And the reason for that is if you should hook it up to say your track power, right, it will not work for you. And the reason is because your DCC track power is not actually AC current. Like if you run it through if you run your DCC through a rectifier, it will definitely power those LED lights if you drop the voltage, with your resistors. But it's not true DCC current. It's actually pulse width modulated current that's carrying specific signals, and it'll shut off for fractions of a second, and as part of the coding process that the decoders in your locomotive understand. But when that hits the A-Tiny13, it sends it the signal to shut down and start over whatever process it was doing. So the way you get through that is through that step down converter, like I showed with that DC3 circuit.
Would a capacitor in the circuit too help for that? Like, kind of, I would think it'd store energy, so when it shuts off for a second.
That could help. Although one thing I've noticed is that I've done my own rotary beacon in a GP35 using this A-Tiny13 that I plug into a regular lighting function. And I've compared my circuit that I've done to what Rapido has done with their circuit, and they have a surface mount step down converter on their board, and I don't have it on my board. So I notice whenever I lose track power, even though my locomotives all have keep alives in them because I use TCS for most of my locomotives, it's still a great indicator of where I have dirty track, because if track power gets cut off for a second, my rotary beacon will stop. And it'll just phase out and it'll mess up the cycles. So even that capacitor won't help it that much. You want that step down converter, which smooths out the voltage as well.
How do you program one of those? I guess you have to have another circuit to drive it, huh?
Yeah. So the way it works, you can actually, it's the same way that you'd program an Arduino. There's a website, and let me find it. I have it bookmarked on my computer here. And I'll share it in the chat. But there's a website where it says specifically how you hook up one of these Tiny13 chips to the Arduino, and then you can flash the code to that chip over the Arduino, and that's how you program them. But then once they're programmed, then you simply supply voltage and they'll do it forever, just like just like an Arduino is once you programmed it.
Cool.
Let me see. Yep, there it is. So yeah, it's I mean, you know, that's one of the great things about model railroading as a hobby. To me, it's just been this method of sort of tinkering with a whole bunch of things that I would not otherwise necessarily get into. You know, there's
true.
Oh, that's just to you. Let's make it to everybody. There we go. There we go.
Okay, cool.
So that's so yeah, there's just a whole lot. There's just a whole lot that you can do, especially if you have the logic functions of an Arduino.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that I don't know if you remember that or saw that traffic barrel that I was showing before we started. I'd like to add a little, you know, one of those little flashing warning lights on it. And if you printed the thing hollow, I don't know if it would fit, maybe in like O scale or something, but you could I would think you could almost fit the circuit and everything in the barrel, but that, or stick it under the layout. But then you could just use a regular Arduino, I guess, for that.
Yeah. Well, for those barrels, I'd venture to say that they'd be small enough in HO scale that you wouldn't be able to fit the Tiny13 into it.
Yeah.
But I mean, you could, yeah. But one trick that I didn't talk about this yet, but I found that the 0402 warm white LEDs, like it's nice to just keep one color of LED on hand. And I then will, you know, dip that LED once I've assembled the circuit. I'll dip it into red clear paint or green clear paint or whatever clear acrylic paint I want to get that lighting effect. And the neat part about that method is that it gets you probably the closest of anything to getting an incandescent colored light, because you're putting that lens of paint over it. At least to me, you know how with Christmas lights, that you have the colored LED lights, and they're all the bright green, the bright blues, you know, and all that stuff. But it's not quite the same as the incandescent glow that you get of the yellowish, you know, the blue behind the blue lens, or the red filter, or, you know, whatever else. And a lot of the LED Christmas light manufacturers have now switched to that where they have the incandescent look, which is just that warm white LED that's then underneath those lenses.
Yeah, the clear paint, I use it. To me, I've done the same even with the cool white LEDs, because that, if you get those too, like you can get that. But then I've had success with the clear orange and clear yellow. I think the orange is better to get more of the lower, the 3200K or that lower Kelvin temp those are at. But yeah, makes it really versatile.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's what I did at first. And I think it was, I think back when I was starting this off, it was Mr. DCC or DCCU or something like that. I think it was Model Railroad Hobbyist. In fact, that was putting it out in those days.
Yeah, I think I think that guy is even on Division One's meeting. Mr. DCC is what they call him, I think.
Yeah, Bruce Patarki, I think.
Yeah, Patarki, yeah.
Yeah.
Man, I was like, I'm terrible with names, so remembering them. Yeah. When you solder those LEDs, do you put any sort of flux on them, like liquid flux or anything? Do you like doing that?
I generally will flux the wires and then heat up the wires.
Okay.
But the problem is it's very easy to overdo the flux on those tiny LEDs. You have those very tiny pads, and flux causes that solder to flow, and it's very easy to get it to flow right over the space between those pads, and then you've buggered up the whole thing. So,
right. Yeah, I've always had issues with even the flux. I had just got some liquid flux, more liquid, but I've been using this the more stiff paste. That's what I use for doing track work. And I'll try to I'll take a little micro brush, stick it on there, and then the LED comes off with the on the brush. So
right. That's the problem too. And I think that flux actually dissolves the adhesive, that on your tape that you're using. So it ruins, I found that it ruins the system anytime I try and put the flux into the mix.
Yeah. I got some, I tried to, you're talking about the 201s. And I think I've told you on Facebook too. So here's my, let's see, I can pull this up here and show you. Here's my one attempt to do the 201s. I got one of them done, and then this is the only one that I've been able to get to actually work. I don't have one of it off, but so I got this little video microscope thing. I would say I think it was like maybe $100 at that. It was pretty cheap compared to like the AM scopes or the bigger ones. Let's see if I can find it. If I can find it. Anyway, I'll search for it. See, and if I can find it, I'll maybe post a link to it. So, but anyway, yeah, I did that. That's it there. And that, I think that right there is a 0.05 millimeter lead pencil. For scale. I did that for scale.
Right.
So it's almost the width of that pencil, and I think I think these are them. I got them in the cut tape, and I got these little SMD containers, and I just stuck them all in there. And
now I find too that while we're on that, and I saw your pencil, and that made me think of the solder tip. A fine solder tip is a good thing to have for this. The finer, the better. And you also want to have an adjustable temperature solder station, ideally digital adjustment. And I find that if I adjust that thing down to the low 600s rather than the typical 750 temperature, I get better results with those LEDs because it also tends to it doesn't tend to disturb the adhesive backing on the tape quite as much at the lower temperature. And also is a little bit less likely to burn up that LED. But just enough to get that solder to flow onto those pads.
What did you say you're using for tape again? On that, just double-sided?
Yeah, I just tape? Well, what I use is so double-sided carpet tape will work. I've used that to good effect. But what I've used a whole lot of is just masking tape, frog tape.
Okay.
That you get at the store, and then I use 3M spray adhesive on the back of that tape, and then I stick it down to a glass sheet, and then I can go through an entire locomotive, maybe even two, on that same piece of tape. Just kind of push it out of the way, and then it cleans up easily later on, just with a razor blade, that you just kind of scrape it off of that glass sheet.
Cool. I'll have to try the glass. I got a piece of glass right next to my workbench, but I got stuff all over it. I bought it because everybody says, yeah, work on glass. And I don't know. It's a weird thing. I'm not used to it yet. So, I've truly found working on glass to be an immensely helpful thing. I mean, it cuts, you can cut things very nicely with your knife on top of glass without dulling your blade right away. But you can also, when you're gluing walls together on a building, you don't have to worry about that adhesive seeping into your desk and having your building stuck to the desk. You can because wood is porous, so you can very easily scrape it off of the glass, whereas you might not be able to scrape it off intact off of your desk. Yeah.
Marble countertops also work very good for that.
Oh yeah. Right. Anything that's smooth, non-porous, and non-reactive.
All right. I found the link to that microscope I use, so I put that in the chat there for anybody to look at. Yeah, it's 107. I guess they even have a 2K. I didn't see that when I bought it. But yeah, I just have that 12 megapixel one. I bet that 2K would be even better. But that 12 megapixel is really not bad. The thing I don't like about it is the base, and that's something like I actually turned mine around and put some weight. I had to put some weight on the back of it to get it to stay. But that way, I'm not having to work right there on the base. And also, when I first got it out, I was actually trying to inspect a PC board out of a power amp. I was having some issues with the card, and I thought maybe the card was dirty. Card reader slot that had the firmware in it was dirty, so got that thing out of there, and I could zoom in and right down the edge of it because it's mounted vertically on that PC board. But I was able to see that thing was so dirty. It was so dusty. He never blew it out. This is for a guy that is a client, but I could actually see like grains of sand with the thing in the SD card slot. So yeah, once you get it focused and get enough light, it's actually not bad. So
no, that's a great tip. Like, especially if you're, especially for this kind of work where you're not really moving around too much. Obviously these are tiny things to deal with, and I've been doing it basically without any kind of vision enhancement at all. Like, I've tried using the visor, but it seems like that's worse than nothing at all, because you're never in the correct distance, and you're always moving around just enough that you lose focus, and then well, and two, to focus with those, you have to get really close to it, so then you're getting double with the solder smoke. So which isn't great for you either. It's not, but it smells so good. Well, it depends, but but
Yeah, well, and I was thinking too, getting that. I really like to mount it on an arm. That's what I think would be really cool. Like the big am scopes, which are like $600-700 for one.
Yeah,
I'd like to figure out some sort of arm I could mount it on. But I was thinking
right.
that with that, you could even use it for like, doing all the detail stuff that we do on locomotives and painting figures and all that kind of stuff. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah. Now you just got to get that brush point that's fine enough for doing that paint.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's something I'm kind of well. Speaking of fine points, it's I just have a Heiko iron, and I've got a real fine tip, and then there's even I have one of these at my workbench at work, but it's a much more expensive one. But they have like a micro iron that you can plug into it. And I've been like, I really want to get one, but it's like $250 for it. So, and there's probably more now, but,
Right.
I think, and I'm trying to get into doing more SMD soldering because everything's going to that. And I got a hot iron station the other day, to repair a microphone back with. And, but I feel like I feel like that micro iron would be really nice. I just don't know, before, how big the tip is. But the one I've got for that Heiko's, it's pretty small. It's about the size of that. Like when I get it down on that 201, I just stick it right on the edge and it seems to work. But yeah, the problem is getting the magnet wire to stick and stay. That's my issue.
Yeah.
And
Well,
not
yeah, and
picking
then
Yeah.
and then when you're stripping it to get it to strip, but not just burn up the whole darn
Yeah.
wire.
Yeah. Right now I'm trying to make a festoon, like a little, like those lights you see hanging on patios. I think they call them like, yeah, string lights.
Yeah.
I'm trying to make one of those out of 201 LEDs for the burger stand for this place. And so right now I've got a popsicle stick with 8 LEDs spaced at 2-foot intervals in O scale on there. And I've got this like clear tape that I've really super sticky tape. I stuck it down, and that's all I've gotten so far. And so my thought is I can maybe go series on these LEDs,
Well,
and then maybe do parallel, like a string of 8 of them or something. But
I'll have to I did a What's Neat video on this. I think it was December 2019.
okay.
I'll try and pull up the cars here, or the photos of the project. That's 2017. I made these Christmas cars. Basically, I took a couple of the Bachmann old timer cars, and I added LEDs all along the top, like you had a string of Christmas lights across the top,
Wow.
alternating red and green.
Oh,
And cool. The technique I used for that, let's see. The technique I used for that is I actually drilled number 80 holes all along the top of the car at regular intervals. So you could do this with a strip of styrene that would go along the top of your building or whatever. And then I fed the 2 wires through that, and I used, in every one of those LEDs was warm white, that I did the technique of dipping it into or painting it with the clear acrylic Tamiya paints. And and I basically fed those strings, or fed the wires through the holes. A number 80 hole will accommodate 2 of those magnet wires.
wow.
And then I soldered them together in parallel on the back side, so that the entire string of LEDs was in parallel.
how much current would that draw with them in parallel, or do you know how many LEDs there were?
It was about, it seems like it was 21 to a side. And it wasn't enough of a current draw to really create any kind of heat disturbance or anything like that. But it, yeah, no, just the important thing was that you didn't get the wires crossed.
Mhm.
I think I had one resistor for each side, so that, there were no more than 22 behind a single or 21 behind a single resistor. And if memory serves, I think I may have used a 10K resistor instead of the 1K because they didn't need to be as bright because they were mounted directly on the surface of the car on the outer surface. So I didn't need them to be as bright as, say, locomotive lights. I was looking more like for step light brightness, that kind of thing. So I used 10K resistors, which dimmed them down as well and also reduced the amp draw even further.
Oh, cool.
And I'm trying to pull up a photo of it, and of course, when I actually try to do that, I find that I have tons of photos on all sides of them. Let's see. Now, where are they? Yeah. Let's see. There we go.
Oh, wow.
So there's that's one of them. And then this one, this doesn't show up so well, but using a timer chip on the inside of the car, I actually had a pattern of, see if there's a video. Yeah, so this is a video, so I'll play that. So you see the bells ringing back and forth, and this is at the Magic House Children's Museum where I work, and I set them all up there for December. But just that bell ringing effect, and the idea there was a circuit that I saw someone doing for a grade crossing, and I figured that if I had two pictures of the, let's see, stop sharing here. If I had the two positions of the bell, I could just have it flashing back and forth, and create the animation that way.
Yeah, just like they do with the Christmas light displays. There'll
Right.
be like several, like, if you look at the frame that it builds. Yeah, that's cool. Boy, like, talk about a rabbit hole you can really go down.
Oh yeah.
Light and everything. So, man.
Right.
Well, I think that's what
Right.
makes this hobby really interesting for everybody, because it's got something for everybody.
Well, and I found too that when I started doing the LED conversions on the locomotives, adding the step lights and all of that, I found that the typical conversion time for upgrading a locomotive to DCC really went from a couple hours, to install the decoder, to like a week or two to, do all the supplementary lighting and all of that, which, once you start doing it, it just, anything that comes after that doesn't look right anymore if you don't have it.
Yeah. Well, and it adds a lot of depth and realism to it too. That's sort of what I'm thinking about with this diorama. I started out with, I'm like, it'd be really nice to, because they're trying to shoot this for a commercial for a company, and they will, I thought, well, really, if I had some lights in it, it kind of make it come to life. So then I started out just buying the Just Plug, some of the Just Plug stuff, because I thought, oh, it'll be cheap and quick and easy, even though I could solder the LEDs. I'm just like trying to do it real fast. Of course, it's taken, I'm like over a year into this thing now. And then now I'm like trying to solder together string lights for the dang patio deal. So,
Right.
it's like, well, it'll never end. But and then so now I've gone from the Just Plug, and I started researching using like an Arduino or an ESP8266 to do like a I'm thinking if I could set up a web page where they can go on the, enter the address in, pull it up, and then they can dim all the different lighting aspects for this thing. So, it's like you just hook the thing up into an output pin on a PWM board, and that's all you need. Of course, you got to do all the coding, but I'm wanting to learn that anyway. So, that's the whole point of it. So, yeah.
Yeah. The other thing that I've been wanting to experiment on is, how you have these RGB string lights, and I've been thinking about, string those around the ceiling in the layout room, and using them in combination with dimmable lighting to sort of create the different hues of, sunset, sunrise, that one would see in a typical day.
Yeah, I was thinking of something like that. I watched a documentary, or kind of behind the scenes film of one of the Pirates movies that they were making. And so they did all this in a huge soundstage, and they're hanging these, what they call space lights. They're like big, huge silk bag lights that have, anyway, they hung a huge grid of them, and the dimming, I don't know what they had, like some 10,000 channels or 10,000 channels of dimming, or there's like 10,000 amps of power running all this in a huge like dimmer farm for it. And each one of those lights has a 19-pin Socko cable that's 6 circuits running up to that light. So there's 6 lights in there, massive, huge. But the whole concept, what they were doing with it was they were trying to create. This was in the Maelstrom sequence, I think, I want to say it's the second Pirates movie. I want to, the one with the tentacly Davy Jones guy. Anyway, they're doing the Maelstrom where they're circling the big tornado in the water, and so that what they were trying to do was simulate the sun and as they're turning, the sun and the clouds and the shadow, even though it was raining, but trying to simulate that, with all this lighting up there. And so it got me thinking about, oh, that'd be pretty neat on a layout, not to that scale, but, I thought, what if you could miniaturize it with like little LED lights, just like scattered out in a grid, above your valance or whatever, and then I'll hook them up to, I was actually looking at DMX, dimmers at the time before I even knew about Arduinos. And I thought, man, you could actually simulate clouds passing over your layout that way. If you had them all where you can dim them in sections and zones. But if you want to go to the extreme, that would be cool. but the LED, and then you go with the RGB like you're talking about, and, doing the daylight and dusk, so it like sets as it goes across. So,
Yeah.
possibilities are endless.
Yeah, I know. If you ever check them out on YouTube, this layout that they have, I don't know if you've heard of Miniature Wonderland in Hamburg. That's like a constant, like throughout they have like a 12-minute day cycle that they go through dawn, dusk, and then it gets really dark, and all the lights come on. You hear night noises going on, and it's just such an awesome effect.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I'm sorry to hog the conversation from everybody. Has anybody else got anything to say or questions or anything?
No, you guys are hitting on some good stuff. So I was just sitting here listening.
Yeah.
I've seen where people have done day cycles using the Alexa controlled light bulbs.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Philips
Yeah.
Hughes. Yeah.
And these LED can lights, I think like I have set up in here, if you put them on a nice dimmer switch, it's amazing what you can do with that and with automated. Like just the difference here, going to almost nothing, still enough to see by. But yeah, I just kind of think that, these lights in a layout room would be awesome. Because they provide plenty of light for anything, but
I've got
very adjustable.
I'm trying to find a picture. I've got on one of these buildings I built. I modified this garage, this Lionel. I thought I had a picture of the inside. I might have to go get it. Here's my photos. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so here's this little garage. This whole dormer thing just pops off the top, so it's like the part of it's upgrading their house. And so that whole roof and everything, I've got magnets in there that sit it. So I wanted to put like soffit lights in was my idea. It kind of worked, but I think the LEDs I picked were these were actually I bought for ditch lights or something on a locomotive. And of course they're a little bluer. I need to paint them with that clear yellow, and they're. But anyway, that's what that's what I did there. And if I can, I thought I had a picture of the roof of that. I cannot find it though. Anyway, but inside, like I just wired it to an LED, and then I got that JST plug, and so I could plug it into one of those light hubs and work that way. So, but I may do it all differently now. So anyway, that was an LED project I've got, and I just have it all glued up in the roof up there. That'd be cool to show. Might like to see that. So
Nice.
Well, and then too, lighting your buildings, brings up another topic. I did that with this O scale burger stand that I've got. And once I put the lights in it actually has an interior. Let me just go grab it real quick because that way I can show you. I don't have the. Let me turn my background off too because I'm going to have to do that. I had that all up here. Oh, here it is on my other screen. So, yeah. So let me go grab that real quick. It's right over here. So this is the one that I'm trying to build the little string lights for.
Okay.
I've got a little gazebo thing that I built that goes over here that they would hang on. So the pull the deck off and then you can see in here. So in here, I'll see if I get my. I don't know if y'all might be a little dark. I don't know if y'all see that well. I've got all the light strings stuffed up in there, so I could set this thing down. But in here, it's got a little resin cast interior that it came with in there. So it's like a little kitchen. And then on this side, that it might see it better if I pull the roof off. I don't have the roof glued on yet because I'm still trying to get it all wired and everything. There's the top of it, and so it's got nice. Jars and the stove and everything. And so once I stuck once I got it lit up, the door right here is see-through. So when I lit it up, I got the lights on it, and then I'm looking at it, from a distance, and I'm like, oh, you can see the interior in there. And at first I was thinking, why am I going to all this trouble painting it? Because they're not going to see it. But because it was dark. But once I added those two
Right.
lights in there on the top, you can see everything. And so now I'm like, I need to paint little labels for the condiment cans that are in that, you can see through that window right there. So that's my next process, my
Oh,
next
nice.
step. So, but I tell you what, like, one thing leads to another on all this stuff. And
No.
I think if I were to put this on a layout, I probably would like this little porch thing in here. But on this part, you won't. I'm actually, I might. I don't know. I was thinking that the way this is sitting on that diorama and the way the camera's going to be traveling down is this way. So you won't really see this all under here, but that would be cool to light it up. Probably wouldn't take much to do. So.
Well, now one thing that I just thought of, how you have those little tiny LED Christmas light strands that I know they're at Target and I've seen them at Ace, that kind of thing. Usually powered with a button cell battery. That that I actually used them to light up a 3D printed lake lamp that I did. But a colored string of those, or they, like for O scale, they might actually work.
Yeah, they're like, I think they're called like fairy lights or something, or
fairy lights. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I have a bunch of those actually. I don't know what we have them for, but somehow I've actually been lighting up Christmas decorations with them. I think we had them at our wedding or something. Like I don't know, they bought a whole bunch of those and stuck them in cans and stuff. But yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. I may have to look into that because I might go nuts soldering these little LEDs.
Well, yeah, and especially if you're thinking of just having them sort of in a string, like that's kind of draping across the ceiling, because to do the soldered together look, to do that by just simply soldering together a series of LEDs, I could see that being a very fragile and frustrating installment. That it wouldn't.
Yeah.
That's one thing when I'm doing the LED lighting. I want to make sure they're tied down well,
right,
so they don't move.
My other thought was just in that pergola that I built, just going and mounting a few LEDs right behind the board, just to give that light, that down light, like there's light in there. And that's kind of what I want to have with the string lights, just to create some depth and warmth. Because I was talking with the guy that I'm doing all this for, and I was like, yeah, I'm kind of started getting into doing the lighting on it, and he was like, yeah, that might be cool to do, a dusk type scene. And I was like, yeah, it better be cool if I'm going to do all of it, I was kind of hoping they'd use all of it. But so that was sort of my reasoning for it. It's one, just to create some light in there, so that way you see the people there in the picnic tables.
Yeah.
But it'd be cool to really see the string lights, but that might also, might have to really dim them down, because with camera, it might blow out the, like when I was taking that picture, just kind of blew everything out. So, but I thought about doing that just to keep it simple, and I may, do that.
Yeah.
So we'll see how it goes. I've tried to, I got it all stuck on, and I've got to solder it too. So I'm just kind of got like 4 or 5 different things going on at one time with this. So yeah. Cool.
I know how that works. Get into the middle of one project and then start another one, and
yeah. Yep. All righty. Well, is anybody else got anything? And we might I might go ahead and wrap up this meeting then, if nobody does. So. All righty. I guess not. So
got some good ideas out of this, and so it was far afield from what I'm doing, but it's very interesting to hear about it.
Well, John, you work in G scale, so you'd have a lot better, you don't have to have to get as small, but then the smaller LEDs though would be more realistic for some things too. So yeah.
Got to learn to solder better first.
Yeah, it is an acquired skill. I'd say it's you gotta burn many LEDs to start
Oh
with.
yeah. Oh yeah.
It's
What-
like letting the magic smoke out of the decoders. I'm sure a lot of
And
this
yeah,
have done it.
and the burn rate for me at least has never quite gone to zero. So
Well, I'm still burning those 5 millimeter ones, the LEDs for my boards stuff to show where the power is.
Yeah. Maybe we should I should probably do a clinic on soldering. Maybe that would. I feel like I'm not great at it, but I know enough to get by, kind of thing. So, but that might be a cool thing. I'm trying to look for topics to present on, but anyway. So, all right, cool. I want to thank James for coming on, and that was. I always find it interesting, so I hope everybody did too, and then and learn something from it. So we'll kind of keep hitting the different aspects. We did scenery and painting a couple months ago, and next month we're going to do painting figures and resin print. So anyway, if y'all have anything you want to hear from or clinics you'd like to see, just let me know and get some presenters, or if you know of people that would want to present, let me know. So,
Hey, Brooks.
Yes.
One question. Does Mini Prints make stuff other than HO? Do they scale stuff up and sell it?
Yeah.
I think
actually, yeah, I've actually got let's see if I can get it right here. I don't know where my other one went. I had them all right here. Well, I had one. I had a mini Lionel. I can't find them, but I do have the latest one. This is the the Angry Mailboy, Bruce the Mailboy, from Modelers Live. So this guy's in G scale. So they do have stuff in G scale. I don't know how much, but I think I'm pretty sure he can do it in any scale, because once you have the file, it's just scaling it up and down on that. So yeah, I've been buying a lot of stuff in O scale and our O scale for the diorama, but then I've also been getting HO. Here's like a little HO fishing boat, and complete with an outboard motor on it and everything. So
okay,
they come unpainted, and so you have to paint them and everything. There's a few I think that do come painted, and then here's let me pull this out of the wrapper here. Here's those traffic cones that I was talking about earlier. So they're a little tall and skinny for me. from what they're not I don't know if they have different cones in Canada is what I'm what I'm thinking. So
yeah.
but they're not short and fat like the ones here are. So I was like, well, they almost could be like windsocks for maybe that would work for windsocks for a airport strip.
It seems like they taper a little bit too much toward the top.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And they're hollow. Of course, they're probably hollow like that for printing purposes. Of course, you could probably put some styrene or something on top to plug them up, but they don't really look like what they did on the website. So I'm not really sure on that one, but I may have to ask them about that. But I'm sure I'll find a use for them somehow. So, but yeah, it's pretty cool. I got the mini Bernie, and on his clinic, he was actually showing painting birds. Let's see if I can. I got here's the HO scale Lionel. here. So
Oh, yeah, there it is.
and I have the O scale one all painted up. Let me see if I can grab it real quick. I don't know where. Oh, it's probably down here. So yeah.
Lionel is now on Pella Solberg's layout.
Yeah.
I saw.
Yeah, and I got the decals that Mike Buddy made for any of those that bought them, but I bought the G scale one later, and I don't know where it is. I got to find it. So my thought was buying those 2 G scale figures that I paint them up and then have them on my workbench there, so kind of like they're looking at me working. So see if I can get it to focus. There it goes. So there's the Lionel that I painted up. So I need to get his decal on the shirt. And I tried to do like kind of a stonewash shirt. So I sort of tried to speckle it. And then you can't really see that. I'll have to take a pictures of it but I even tried to hand paint the Blue Jay on the hat there. Because he likes the Blue Jays. So
Well, that's where you truly find out how big and clumsy your toothpick can be. Yeah. I tried to paint a Walther's HO scale guy with a St. Louis Blues emblem on his shirt and all that, and
right.
From a distance it looks all right.
Yeah. It's I actually using Michael's paintbrushes. They're level 3. It's like a green. It's got a little green tip on it, but that's the one I really like those. So they're anyway, but yeah. So I've been painting them a little bit of them on there, and I got this banjo guy. There's actually 2 of them you get. So some of these mini prints you actually get multiples of them in the thing. I started out painting them black. It's kind of like a modeler's like armor modeler's pre-shading technique. And so I started painting them black, and then I hit white on the top. And then hopefully, like when I paint it, I'm thinking that the highlights, but I kind of wind up painting really opaque with the brush painting anyway. So I was going to paint this guy up, and I haven't finished him yet at all, but I was going to try to do that, maybe put him on one of the porches or in this. I thought about actually having him sit in the corner of the deck on this burger stand, playing or something like that. So anyway, so I guess to answer your question, John, yes, they do some G scale stuff. But if you go on the website, he's got tons of things. And then he's even got this, I just signed up for it. It's a print of the month club. And so I think you get like for $25 a month, you get, you'll get like 3 or maybe 5 models, different models. And they're one of a kind, not for sale. Like they're just exclusively for the print of the month. So I think maybe later on they do release them online. I'm not sure. He'll have to explain all that, but I'm yet to receive my first one because I think he sends them out in the middle of the month, and he was in Timonium at the show up there, which is happening I guess last weekend. So it was kind of right in the middle of the time he'd send it. So I think he sent them out. So just waiting to get them, but anyway, so we'll look forward to that. So yeah. Cool. All righty. Well, I think with that, I'm going to wrap the meeting up, and then if y'all want to stick around and talk, we can, and I'll keep the meeting open if anybody wants to talk. So, but yeah, I want to thank you everybody, and join us for the next meeting on I think it's November. Get my calendar, make sure. Yeah, November 21st. So that we'll have the Bernard Helen and mini prints. And also a reminder, if anybody's come on, I think actually everybody that's on here is on here when we started, but I posted the link up at the top. So if you're not on the email list, sign up if you want to be. And that way you can catch future meetings. And, with us being on Zoom right here, I try to bring in some heavy hitters, I call them. So, just people all over the place. So we can learn cool things like having James on, with technology. We can have him remote in all the way from St. Louis. So, but anyway, with that, we'll sign off on the meeting and see everybody next month.